I love the countdown. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Let the Rest Burn. Coco Nelson here. I am interviewing Ashley Abramson, a self-love mentor, on my podcast today. And she and I are going to get into some really cool topics. I'm very, very excited. Welcome to the podcast, Ashley.
Thank you, Coco. I'm super excited to be here today. And I think when we first met, you were like, "You're my soul sister." And I felt the same way. Like we just have a lot of similar beliefs and just journeys. So I'm super excited to be here.
Me too. Okay, so I would love for my audience to know a little bit more about you. We were just talking about this before we hit record. It's so hard to define who we are in like one sentence. So I like to give my guests the opportunity to have a have a conversation about it rather than an elevator pitch. So just tell me a little bit about like what you do, like how you serve, and some of the people that you serve or the things that you do, programs you offer.
Yeah. So I like to say that I help people clear out all the noise, all of the crap that is clouding their truest self, and the answers within. I'm a firm believer along my own journey. I sought out answers externally a lot through, human design,
Mm-hmm.
astrology. I was really, Myers Briggs was actually the first thing I really came across, and that was in
Hmm.
school for social work. One of my teachers presented it, and I was like, oh, this tells me who I am. Wonderful. So I researched a ton of that,
Mm-hmm.
and that's been a very consistent narrative throughout my life until probably the last 5 or 6 years. I realized that my answers are within, and no one can tell me exactly who I am except for myself. So really a journey
Mm-hmm.
with me and with my clients, the main focus is getting you to those your own answers, how to hear them, how to not only hear but receive. I think there's such a difference in hearing it versus actually receiving it and then acting upon it and
Mm.
listening. So yeah, that's essentially my journey. I do a lot of inner child work with people. So it's not about going back and uncovering things from our childhood. It's more about what is going on in the moment and how does that tie back to something in our childhood, right? We don't go on these
Ooh.
excursions or adventures into our childhood where a lot of times they don't need to be brought up. And before we hopped on here, you and I kind of chat a
Mhm.
little bit about how trauma has become this buzzword, and people are really like, let's uncover all of your trauma. And I don't know how you feel, Coco, but I feel that there's a lot of traumas that don't necessarily need to be uncovered. They've maybe been healed in their own way, but it's really looking at who are you today and what are the areas that need healing for you to be a better person today. So that's really my focus.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of some of my clients call me ego whisperer. I really have this ability to I'm in the process of untying my own ego to see the ego in the room, the elephant in the room, and just kind of not even acknowledge it. Don't hear its falsities or its attacks or fear, but instead to find that place of love and forgiveness and help others find that place as well.
Mm.
So I really see it as that next level. I'm taking people to that next level of understanding their own answers within. And some people that journey looks like the journey to true enlightenment, and some people that journey looks like just healing enough to operate in the day to day. And it's just really about honoring people and where they want to be in their journey.
I think that last sentence is really, really powerful. Honoring people and where they want to be in that journey. You know, in terms of my own trauma work, like personally and professionally, I think our body leads the way, right? So if we're experiencing something today in the present moment that is uh, disruptive or causing us distress, self-exploring or exploring with a trained expert into where that's rooted from and being able to clear that from your nervous system is a really powerful work. But I think that where people kind of divert, sorry, I have terrible allergies. So if anybody's hearing me sniff, that's what's going to be happening the whole podcast. But I know it's springtime. Um, I think that's where it diverts is, so it's not that we have to do this. I mean, I'm EMDR certified, so we do a trauma timeline, and honestly, that is just to keep you and the clinician safe, typically. So if there's things that can come up, we understand,
Mhm.
because there's certain traumas that don't need to be uncovered, especially right away. So it's like a guide map for us when we're going in and making sure, okay, we're not going to touch age 5 for right now because there's a lot there that could really dismantle and derail your reality today.
Right.
And that, you have to be ready for, or even consent to, really is a big piece for me. So I think it's so important to understand the difference between understanding what's happened in your past and feeling like you have to process, heal, and unpack every single trauma you've experienced in order to be okay today.
Mhm.
That's not true. It's a lifelong journey. It's part of what comes up and what's presented to us. And also, clearing your nervous system can happen in so many different ways, in so many different modalities, from breath work to plant medicine to somatic experiencing to EMDR. It doesn't matter. Like, our body wants to heal. It naturally wants to heal. So it's going to find these methods and these mechanisms to do so. It's about having the mentors, the guides, the therapists, the coaches along the way to help you stay safe and grounded and rooted in now, because right now is what you're living. And I think that's the piece that gets lost, is what is your actual role as the mentor, the
Right.
guide, the therapist, and
For sure.
that's where things can get dangerous for people who don't quite understand the mechanisms and the depth of what trauma can do to the present moment and to the brain as well.
Yeah. No, I 100% agree with a lot of that. And I've really gotten to this place of understanding that, like, my body is just a projection of the mind and not the brain. I'm not talking about the brain, but the actual mind. And I think sometimes that can be seen as tied into the nervous system. But looking at how my body is responding right now is really a good flashlight into what's going on in the mind and what needs to be healed, because it will be
Mm.
projected back out into the body. So mine is a lot of focus work. You do somatic. I focus a lot on the mind, right? Just really
Hmm.
understanding. For me, I believe this is an illusion in a holographic universe, and just really understanding how you can heal within that, through the
Hmm.
mind, through the projector of the hologram. Um, so yeah, I think often it's a goal of, let's see how far or how deep we can go and how fast with people who aren't really
Mm.
trained in it. I know people used to kind of measure, like, oh, they cried a bunch in our session today, it must have been really helpful. That's not always the case, right? Sometimes you're doing a
Right.
lot more damage. And then I think a lot of people now walking around that are hiring coaches and hiring practitioners to guide them that aren't really trauma trained or trauma informed, even
Mm.
trauma informed, um, feel that they have to tackle the entire mountain to get somewhere. And that is just, first of all, if you told me that today, Coco, even at the place I'm at, I'd be like, go F yourself. Like, there's no way I'm
Yes.
tackling that entire mountain. That's just so
Yes.
much.
It's extremely overwhelming.
Yeah,
Yeah.
especially when
Yeah.
you're already in that state of, fight or flight or freeze or whatever it may be.
Hmm.
And you haven't even done any of the work. Me, who's done a crap ton of
Yeah.
work, it's not helpful, I don't think.
Yeah. I hear you. I hear you. And I love, I think it's so important to understand that the mind and the body work together in order to create this reality, or this space that we're in. And so I think it's really important to have different guides and coaches that approach things from different arenas for that reason, right? And so I love that, the way that you show up is very specific, and you're able to clearly communicate that, because different people are going to be guided to different modalities, and that's the beautiful part of this being a self journey, is what modality speaks to where are you being led, what's your purpose. For me, it definitely goes back to a spiritual perspective, like, what is um our soul contract is basically the word I would use, but how do we arrive here and do the work we're meant to do,
Hmm.
um, and who are we led to and why, right? And so there's a lot of really beautiful nuance to that. And there's what I think it also does is it humbles, or I hope it humbles, most practitioners, mentors, therapists to this place of like, my client is being guided to me not because I'm the expert and not because I'm this like almighty
Mhm.
awesome human. It's because like I am a part of this journey and they are part of this journey for me as well. And it's this mutual exchange, and that can be a really beautiful experience between a client and mentor, if you step into that space where you're open to learning just as much as you hope your client does. So
Yeah.
it definitely speaks to me in the work that you do.
Yeah, I agree so much. And I think that's when you say humble, I struggle with the word humble. My friend did an amazing reel on it about humbling means like
Hmm.
making yourself less and not worthy, like when you really look at the actual definition, but somehow we've used it as this way of like stepping back. But the true definition, I think, is almost like dim your light. So I get what you were saying with the use of
Mm.
humble, but I would say more it a mirror, right? It provides them with a mirror of opportunity to see what their true purpose is with this person. Because you believe in soul contracts, and I used to really believe that. And where I'm at now in my journey is I believe there's just one spirit here. So it's just spirit, and we're all
Mm.
projected into many. So it's like one into many instead of a
Mm.
very common belief is we're
Love that.
many connected as one,
Hmm.
right? So
Right. Yeah.
I believe that we as a whole spirit, right? All of us, the whole we are, um, we all have a light. And as we do this
Mm.
work and we clear our light off, there's other pieces of the spirit that are meant to be guided by us, but we can only do that if we clear our light
Mm.
off. And when you clear your light off
Right.
and
Yeah.
you show up truly authentically you, it's like literally like a lighthouse. The people meant to find you will
Yeah.
find you,
Yeah.
and you're just meant
I
to be a
love that.
mirror. You're just meant to be a
Hmm.
mirror for them. So that's, in our modalities, it's asking questions, it's reflecting back what we're truly hearing, not being like, here's a diet pill for spirituality and for healing of trauma. You're healed,
Right.
right? It's like, I will provide you a space that is safe and free of judgment and provides you the right amount of reflection needed for you to find your own answers.
Ooh, I love that. Yeah, absolutely. I'm all about qualifying and redefining our language. Most of our language is based in things that are not actually accurate to what we want to say or portray. It's just what we've learned. So I think it's a really beautiful shift to go from thinking about being humbled into a space of just recognizing the mirror image, or really your true purpose and being the light. And it's I ask this question often of my guests. I told you this before we got on here. And so you are like, I can hear the passion in your voice. I can hear the fortitude. I can hear just like the rootedness, the anchor into what you believe, which I think is really powerful. Regardless of whether it's different or not from someone else, it's really wonderful to have someone that's like, no, this is like truth for me. And in speaking in that space, it never comes from defensiveness, or it doesn't come from this place of, um, trying to convince somebody. It just comes from truth.
Right.
And so, how did you arrive at this place? What did you have to burn? This is my question, right? What did you have to burn? Um, Whether it's beliefs or mental images or whatever we want to name it as. What did you have to burn in order to get to where you're at today? What's your journey been like?
Everything. No, I mean, that's what it feels like. It literally,
So, I mean, it's the truth.
yeah.
That's the truth.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, there was so much, right? The societal constructs, the what I had been
Hmm.
taught I was supposed to be. And then the most probably in the last year, it's been letting the reality of what this truly is burn, what I thought it was, the amount of weight I placed on
Ooh.
things within the illusion, the weight on
Mm.
status and money and um
Hmm.
knowledge, right? Finding out that consuming 5 personal development books a day, or having 5 going at the same time, like 3 audibles and
Yes.
2 cell phones,
Yes.
is not
Yes.
helpful. um it's actually harmful. I recently had a client that I
Hmm.
challenged her to a week off of consumption of personal development. Like I said, go ahead, watch
Mm.
Netflix, listen to music, whatever you want, but no consumption of personal development. She immediately froze up and didn't think she could do a week. And we agreed to one day, which felt very uncomfortable to her. But I think what we've become is a walking encyclopedias for personal development that don't integrate. And we're actually using the
Yes.
consumption of information as another smoke and mirrors to our own true reality within. So
Yes.
there's
Yes.
there's a Chinese proverb that I heard one time, and I love it. I share it with everyone. It's uh, to know and not do is to not know anything,
Mm.
right? Like
Ooh, I got
nobody's
goosebumps with that one.
integrating. Yeah, no one is integrating. I used to,
Nobody's integrating. I know. Plant medicine is the one that's I'm on like the soapbox with right now. I'm all about it, y'all. But integrate, please.
yeah,
Integrate. Don't spiritually bypass. Integrate.
100%. Like integration is the only thing that's going to cause transformation, right? Like you can trip every
Yes.
freaking week, but if you don't integrate and
You
incorporate what
can.
you learned, you're just as bad as an alcoholic. Like you're just using it as
Yeah.
another vice to get through life. And one thing, it's interesting you brought up
Yes.
plant medicine because one of the first times I really had an aha moment on our lack of integration was Burning Man. When I first really like dove deep into what Burning Man is and found out like all these celebrities and
Mm.
very famous people go there and wear masks and they trip all week and it's their place to really be who they are. And I'm like, you are escaping. What are you bringing back and integrating? You are like literally you are using Burning Man as your once a year escape from your life.
Yeah.
That is
Yeah.
not helpful.
I know.
That is not helpful at
It's
all.
the I think the escapism is something that's part of the illusion, right? It's very much the smoke and mirrors that keeps us from that light, keeps us from being able to have that transformation or enlightenment in our world. And I'm so fascinated by the different ways that it shows up. It's always morphing and changing. And
Oh yeah.
I truly believe, and I think you hit the nail on the head here. I think the next arena, and especially with Gen Z, I see this all over TikTok right now, and I'm like, oh no, is this over identification with diagnosis, with self help, with self diagnosis, with this idea of like, I'm going to figure out what all the words are that describe how I'm feeling and what I'm experiencing, and then I'm going to feel okay.
Mhm.
And yes, you might feel better understood. I will be honest about that. Like, I do think sometimes words help us communicate better what we're feeling internally to the world.
Yep.
Absolutely. I am not a therapist who diagnoses. I'll say that right now. I don't, for many different reasons. But I see in our culture and our society this overconsumption of fix it, like spiritual enlightenment. This is like everybody's a healer,
Mhm.
everybody's a medicine person, everybody's a shaman. Like, I'm not saying that we all don't have it within us. I'm not, like we said, we're all part of spirit. Yes. But there's something about recognizing truth and also recognizing when you're trying to be in a position of power so you feel better.
Mhm.
And oftentimes, and I definitely did this myself, I put myself in a position of the expert in
Mhm.
order to feel safe, not having to be in the position of a client, not having to integrate, not having to do my own work, not
Mhm.
having to feel it in my body or think about it in my mind. I was like, oh, I can just focus on all of these other people and all this other training and all this other learning opportunities. And then I don't actually have to deal with it in my real life,
Yeah.
and then real life just smacked me right in the face and was like, that's hilarious. Let's try
Yeah.
it again.
I love that.
And I think that's what happens is you get into these escape modalities and then you realize, oh shit, I still have the same issues. I still have the same patterns popping up. I still have the same things. Now it's just being brought to me in different ways. And they're a little louder. Maybe they're a little more messy. And the consequences are a little bigger because I wasn't paying attention, or I was trying to bypass this. In whatever way we chose, I was trying to bypass it in order to get there faster and not
Yeah.
actually feel through it and deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, so I started my journey as a child protection social worker. And when I was 17, 18 years old, I almost had a successful suicide attempt, and I was diagnosed with bipolar. And they told me, the
Mm-hmm.
doctors, Social Security said, hey, you are disabled. They certified me disabled, right? I'm receiving Social Security income. They told me I would never be able to obtain a degree in college, and I would never be able to hold down a full time job. So what I did was I way identified with bipolar. I went and bought every single book on manic depression there was. Like there's this book that's like 1,000 pages long, and I consumed all of it and just became my identity for a couple of years. And then I ended up being like, this isn't my identity, and found my way out. I don't take medications. I don't carry that diagnosis. But it's really interesting because, and this is probably going to prickle a lot of people. And I want to say, before I prickle people,
That's okay.
what I tell people about being prickled is that all I'm being is a mirror for you of something that is truth, but you still have conflict within of being able to fully understand it. So I'm about to prickle some people because right now we are in such a place of wanting to be individuals. This
Mm-hmm.
illusion was created out of separation. So it was created by
Yes.
the
Yeah.
ego. The ego constantly wants to remind us of separation and keep us separated because we are not powerful when we are separated. So this movement of individuality is actually causing more and more separation and less connection. So people feel that through becoming an individual, they feel more connected. Connected to what? Connected to just you?
Yeah.
Like we are causing such further separation of us all than bringing people together. But for some reason, we think that separation is actually oneness. And
Yeah.
that goes to
Yeah.
this movement of enlightenment. There is no level of hierarchy in this illusion. If Coco, if you dreamt last night, because an illusion is a dream, right? It's not real. An illusion is not real. If
Yeah.
you dreamt last night that I was president and you were a poor person on the street, today would you feel that like that mattered?
Yeah.
No, we would
No,
have been
obviously.
equal
Well,
because it was fake. We would have been
mm-hmm.
equal. It's fake. So when we're here talking about enlightenment within the dream, there's this whole hierarchy of energy frequencies, and you're on this frequency, and I'm on this frequency, and this is the frequency you need to be at. That's just more separation. I'm here to say that higher level consciousness is still a part of the illusion. You are just becoming a better player at the video game, which is fine. Like I said at the beginning, if that's your journey, if you
Yeah.
want to keep coming back here, if you want to keep experiencing separation and death, that's okay. Make that choice. But if you truly want enlightenment, which means to wake up from the dream, to no longer be a part of the dream, but to wake up and be back home where you're meant to be, then it has nothing to do about hierarchy, has nothing to do with consciousness, and has everything to do with forgiveness and love and remembering that none of this is really happening. Like our conversation right now, Coco, is not really happening. We're dreaming this. This is fake.
Mm-hmm.
This is not truth. We can't remember what truth is because we're so fucking far from truth. But if you start to do the work with, trauma people, people like you, Coco, people like me, and clear out the noise, you can start to hear what the truth is because it's within you.
Where do you think this all originated from? So if this is an illusion, right? And so I'm only doing I wanna for people that are listening, which I think is most of my listeners like to hear different opinions. So they're very open to being prickled. I prickle a
Okay.
lot of people in general. So I think when we think about it all being an illusion, when we think about being a dream, obviously the common movie that comes up is The Matrix, right? It was a representation of what we're discussing here in a very different way. So when you say the ego, for for many people that can mean different things. So when you think about this is all an illusion, what's happening right now is not real. What we need to do is find love and be brought back to a place of like togetherness. It's very Buddhist, but this like space of we are not separate, we are together.
Mm-hmm.
So how would you describe it?
Mm-hmm.
What is real? What is truth? For those that, again, they're like going to their head with the matrix here.
Yeah.
How do you understand that? Or how did you come to understand that and develop this belief?
Yeah, so it's been a journey, and I've consumed
Mm-hmm.
so much content in my life, like ridiculous amounts, Coco. I started sneaking into the self-help section at Barnes and Noble, like sneaking in. Remember when that was not cool? Like you do not go in the self-help section.
Yes,
Um,
I do.
yeah,
Yeah.
so I've heard so many different possibilities of what this is, but nothing ever just felt
Mm,
right. It always felt like there was something more. Even
mm,
when I figured out like I can manifest and control this illusion, it still is like, okay, so I do that for 80 years and then what? Right? Like doesn't make sense.
yeah.
And then I really
Right.
stumbled across the concept of true oneness. So
Mm,
it, what it is essentially we came from God, right? And not
mm-hmm.
so people that have been hurt by religion, have been hurt by the organized church, I completely understand. I've been in and out. I am not talking organized religion. This is God at the purest form. This is pure love. This is what truth was before man fucked it all up, right? Before the ego got its hands on the narrative. So then what I believe the ego is, so I'm going to explain it in like a parable, right? A way in which it's kind of fun to
Yeah.
understand and how I understand it. So it's
Yeah.
like, let's say, Coco, we're at home with dad, right? And it's this most amazing place. There's so much love. We realize that, hey, we have some of the skills of dad. Like we can create, right? And so we're like, I wonder what it would be like for me to create. But because our mind is so strong, it was immediately created. And we like all of a sudden got consumed with shame and guilt because it wasn't so good, right? So like we tried to run away or thought about it, saw how messed up and scary it was. And then this guy in a white van with puppies and lollipops and French fries was like, hey, I can help you run away from dad because you feel all this shame and guilt that you even had this thought. So we go get in the van, which is the ego, right? And then the ego helps create this projection of our shame and guilt for us to hide in from dad because we think dad is mad we had that thought. When in fact, dad doesn't even know we're having
Mm,
this dream. We are at home right now with God having this nightmare and he has no fucking clue. Because if
mm,
he were to acknowledge it, then he would acknowledge that anything but perfection exists. Therefore, he would not be a God of perfection. He would not be a God of full love. He would be a God of pain and suffering and all the shit you see in this illusion, which we created. But because it is so hard for us to take ownership that we are here by our own doing and we have the ability to get out, that is why we blame on everything, right? I am the way I am because I was
mm,
born to these parents. I am this color because that's the color I was born as. I am diagnosed with this because, do you see? We are constantly blaming. Even in the
mm-hmm.
process of taking ownership, we are blaming.
Mm. So so to clarify,
Mhm.
if is it just humans that experience this, or is it animals? Are animals part of our projection, or is it just the human brain that has the ego?
No, so it's
Is
not the
that
brain. The brain is a part of the projection, right? Is a part of the illusion. So
okay?
the mind is like this thing you can't see, and it's split into two sides. One is the ego, and then the Holy Spirit. And we split and built this wall because we're too
Ah.
filled with shame and guilt. So literally, when people talk about experiencing oneness at the purest level,
Hmm.
it's a
Mm-hmm.
feeling of you are everything. I am this chapstick. I am this
Mm-hmm.
because it is all a projection of the one mind, right? That is why we are one projected into many. It was like One mind had
Got
this,
it.
what they call it, the tiny mad idea, right? The tiny mad idea, where all
Hmm.
of a sudden it was created, and we now live in this tiny mad idea. But we're really not
Hmm.
here.
Does it ever end?
Yes. So the way in which it's already all laid out. So it already happened. It happened in an
Yeah.
instant. But we are just living it now because
Mm-hmm.
time is so different, right? So we're experiencing time at a level that
Yes.
time
Yes, it
does not
is.
really exist. Um, so it's
Mm-hmm.
already occurred, but it's like you and I are watching a movie. It's already occurred,
Mm-hmm.
but we are just now experiencing it, or believe we are experiencing it, right? We believe we are experiencing this when in fact it's already happened. And because it's a hologram, there's multiple scripts, right? So there's multiple
Mm.
realities that have already occurred. That's why there's like phantom limb, because in reality,
Mm-hmm.
within the hologram, your leg still exists over, like, if you shift it over a little bit. So based on what you choose, the ego, which is fear, death, separation, versus the Holy Spirit or your highest self, which is love, all the good feelings, you shift the hologram. And
Hmm.
when you get to the place of continuously practicing forgiveness at the mind, and what that means is, I'll give you an
Mm-hmm.
example, is let's say tonight, Coco, you dream that I ran your dog over, right? You wake up in the morning and you
Mm-hmm.
feel like a little upset, right? And then you realize, you bring awareness, you're like, oh, I dreamt last night that Ashley ran over my dog, but that didn't really happen. So we're all good. In that second, all shame and guilt and anger was released because it didn't really happen. Well,
Got it. Okay. So it's real. Yeah.
when you start to practice forgiveness at the level of this never actually happened, is when you start to actually untie yourself from the ego and gain your journey to enlightenment. And truly, when you can
Hmm.
obtain enlightenment in this dream still, but then what happens is you lay your body aside for the final time and you get to wake up and realize you were home the whole time. Some people come
Okay.
back to help.
And so it's like, and it's this reoccurring, time aside. All of these different people that are experiencing this are all on the journey back home.
We all are. So it's like one
Yeah.
mind,
Yeah.
right? So it's like
So
this different
so
pieces.
if you go home,
Mhm.
yeah, it's different pieces of, like, you go home, let's say this is your last lifetime, right? You wake up and, but I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna reoccur this for a couple more lifetimes or whatever. So it's still, we're still fractured, right? In that space. If you're back and I'm here.
No, because time doesn't exist the same. So that's the hard part. It's hard for us to understand
Mm-hmm.
because where home is, this happened in a second. So it's already over, right? So it's like,
So each of us just have to realize that.
no. So, like, if I went home today, let's say, right, all of a sudden I lay my body
Yeah.
aside today, I go home, it's as if none of this happened because it already happened, because time is different.
Okay.
It happened in a holy instant, and you can return back in a holy instant. And it's interesting we're having this conversation around Easter, right? Because Jesus, that's what he
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
He untied himself from the ego. That is why they were able to nail him to the cross and he rose from the dead and it didn't hurt him. Because not because he was telling you, it was because he was telling you he saw beyond the body. It has nothing to do with the body. The
Mm.
body is an illusion. But for some reason, in organized
Mm-hmm.
religion, um, we have decided that it's all about the body when Jesus was trying to tell us it has nothing to do with the body. People are focusing on
Got it. Yes.
the symbol he was, instead of the source.
Mm-hmm.
And the source was him coming from a
Yeah.
place of love and forgiveness. And so,
So is this what you bring into your, oh, sorry about that.
nope, go
Is
ahead.
this what you bring into your work? Is
So
this the piece, like this recognition, this understanding?
So really, it depends. Like, I have different levels of people where they're at. My Patreon is focused to this. My Patreon has a
Mm-hmm.
Discord community,
Yeah.
and it's open discussion, of just figuring out what this illusion is. And my favorite quote is, "We're all just walking
Yeah.
each other home" by Ram Dass. So that's really what that looks like.
Yes.
And then with my clients,
Mm-hmm.
it's meeting them where they're at. It's their journey. My goal is
Mm.
to walk people to a place where they can hear their own answers within. I'm not here to tell you that this is the way life is. I think there's 1,000 different ways or more to return home. But I do know
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to consciousness and continuing to focus on things externally, that's not the way home. It's within.
Mm-hmm.
So walking with people to forgive, like that is my main
Mm.
focus with my clients.
I love that.
I used to call it healing, but it's just really forgiveness. Forgiveness, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
it's at the ego level, right? Sometimes it's being able to forgive within the
Yeah.
ego illusion. And over time, you start to hear the Holy Spirit or your highest self within you, and you can't not help continue on that journey in the path home when you get to that place. Like
Yeah.
recently, I was on
Yeah.
a podcast
I
with a woman and I completely prickled her on the podcast. The host, she's like, "Oh my god, you prickled me."
it happens.
Yeah, and that night, she ended up emailing me a couple days later and was like, "Oh my gosh, that night I had a dream and I remembered myself as pure love and pure oneness, and I woke up crying and you were
Wow.
exactly what I needed to remember my truth." And that's all I see myself is just a
Yes.
representation
The
of
remembering.
truth, and people will hear the Holy Spirit or their highest self in my laugh. They will hear it in my words. They will hear exactly what they need to hear as long as I show up with truth. But my coaching is not
Mm.
about you need to believe this. My coaching is about
Right.
let's forgive the things that are holding you back from your own answers. Let's heal those
Mm.
to move to that next stage and then do what you want.
Ooh. I love that. I love that. It's well, and it's look, here's the thing, and this is why I have these questions on this podcast. There is a person behind the the offer, the job title, the whatever it is we're presenting on this podcast, right? Like whatever it is. There's a person behind it that has experienced this life and what has made them be the person they are today
Mm-hmm.
and within the illusion. but but I really love unpacking what is the truth, what is it that really brings people to this space, into this calling, into this remembering,
Mm-hmm.
this mirroring for people. And in hearing you be able to speak this, the beautiful part about this is you can say all the right things to create a non-prickly interview,
Mm.
right? You can say all the things that you're supposed to say that feels very comfortable within the construct that that we've created ourselves, right? Or you can say things that are edgy and prickly or whatever it is, and then people have to feel or recognize or remember, or whatever words we want to use to describe it, um, and sit with it and actually like determine for themselves, is this truth? Does this bring me closer to pure love? um, is there a projection in the way of me receiving this truth? Whatever it is.
Right.
I love to be prickled for this reason, because it teaches me something I have yet to learn. And I think that that's part of this, that's part of the coming home, that's part of the remembering, and however we understand it.
Mm-hmm.
um, and I think that was something that was really powerful of what you said, and the difference between organized religion and I think deep spiritual belief, like what you're speaking to, is that there's a recognition that within this illusion, there are multiple ways in which to go home.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the path in which you have found, and this is the path that is most true to you. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be the path for everybody or is the one true path. It is the path that is yours.
Yeah.
And there's some separation in that, and I know that. But I do think that this is a piece that I keep coming back to in whatever healing modality people arrive on. We are all craving that feeling of oneness, belonging, this remembering of not of peace, of
Mm-hmm.
not being in suffering, and trying to make sense of what's in front of us never makes sense,
Right.
right? Like trying to make sense of the of the illusion does not make sense, whatever we want to say. um have you seen the movie Everything Everywhere All at Once? Did you watch that?
No, I haven't. I saw the previews and it looks rather scary. I'll be honest, that's a big piece of my journey as well, is I'm doing so much work to untie myself from the ego, and a lot of times to me it just doesn't make sense to input fear that my subconscious doesn't know the difference between reality and fake. So that's a long answer. I've been told many times to watch that movie. I still have not ventured
Hmm.
into it yet. Um but I want to say a quote. So, what you just all said, there's
Yeah,
a quote that I love, and I don't know who said it. I don't even know if it's actually quoted, but it's, the truth shall set you free, but first it will piss you the fuck off. It's so true. I
that
felt
is
that way.
Gloria Steinem.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I like
yeah.
totally felt that way. It is so true, because I had been on this
Hmm.
journey of making a better dream, manifesting my dreams, doing all these manipulations within the illusion. And then this truth came to me that, like, none of that matters. You putting weight on that is keeping you in the illusion. And I'm like, what? But so and so gets to manifest and this, that. And it was like, I can choose to, but I didn't want to choose to. And it was like that middle ground of that shift of
Mm.
still needing my things externally and my peace and happiness and my salvation
Yeah.
through people, places, and things, to like, oh, it's within me. And now I'm just really at this state of, I just share my truth, right? If it doesn't align with you, that's
Hmm.
fine. It doesn't need to. You have your truth. I have mine. There's many ways to get home. I just know this way will get me home a lot quicker than some of the other ways. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, there's so much to that. And I do think, as before you lay your body down, if you want to live your life through some manifestation, have at it. I mean, that's the thing. If you're in the illusion, why not make it a good one? And it's, and I think that that's where things get that's where choice comes in, right? You get to decide what that actually looks like. And I don't mean that like go become a wealthy millionaire and, you know, do all this crazy shit. I mean, like, why not stand in the sun and enjoy the feeling of it on your face?
Hmm.
Why not actually like enjoy what it is that's in front of you, and um, what has been created? And there's we could literally talk for days. I was a
Yeah.
philosophy as well as a psychology major in school, so for days I could talk about this. But I really loved kind of the peeking behind the curtain, and I think it's really powerful for anybody who's listening, because it's not just hey, this is what I do and this is how I do it. It's like, this is how I've come to the space in which I lead from. And I think it will draw people into your world in such a profound way.
Yeah.
So I really truly appreciate you stepping in and being very real and not being afraid to prickle. It's very important to me
Yeah.
to have that kind of a conversation here. So I
I love
appreciate
that.
it.
A philosophy. I love that. Oh, we could talk
Yes.
for days. Plato's allegory of the cave is a prime example of what I just shared.
Exactly, exactly. God, those shadows, they're so fun to look at.
Hmm.
Um, but I sometimes I dance in the in between like truth and the illusion and the like hilarity of it all. Right? Humor to me is such a beautiful way of just creating some spaciousness around this really tough and challenging work, and to keep you out of that shame and guilt spiral that can happen.
Hmm.
And I love that that's something we all have to go back to, because it is, there's this is a tough journey to return back from, and there's so many different ways in which we can approach it. And
Yeah.
humor and lightness is something that helps us all understand it doesn't have to be this hard. We can turn the ship around and do this work in a very different way.
Yeah.
So if people are called to work with you, if people are interested, I heard you mention the Patreon, which is really cool. I love Discord. It's such a great community building platform. But
Yeah.
how can people find you? How can people get into your world? Where should they go?
Yeah, so essentially, like we talked about Patreon, that's where I talk more about this deep stuff, and then the community. Otherwise, on Instagram, Ash_Abramson, or
Hmm.
probably in the next week, my website will be up, Big Miracle Energy. It's
Ooh.
the same as my Patreon. and send me an email, Ashley at coachwithashley.net. But ultimately, find me on Instagram. And then you'll find your
Yeah.
way to the
Yeah.
other
Right.
places. Yeah, that's so much.
It's
But
like where everything is.
yeah, and I love conversation. Like, as much as I know the things I share prickle other people, I still get prickled today. And like you, Coco, that it's huge for me. I love it. It's kind of weird to sound like I seek it out, because it's a
No.
flashlight. It's a flashlight and an opportunity into areas within me that still need some love and forgiveness. So I'm open to conversation
Yes.
and just whatever.
Mm, I love it. I think the openness to that is a really beautiful gift and offer, because you clearly have done a lot of work around this, and a lot of your own journey is going to bring people into a space where those kind of conversations can be really healthy and beautiful and hard, but also um, help help you both grow. And
Yeah,
the more openness we have of that, I think the more collectively we can all find our way back home. So
100%.
thank you for being
Yeah.
on this podcast. And for anybody that's looking for any of her stuff, we'll definitely put it in the show notes so check out that. And I just appreciate you so much. Thank
Yeah,
you,
I
Ashley.
appreciate you. Thank you.